We are now live.
Awesome. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. It is Tuesday, July 14th, 4:03 in the afternoon. I'll call the City Hall Ad Hoc Committee meeting to order. We have myself, Councilwoman Liz Mealy, Mayor Derek Slaughter, City Engineer John Sander, from Finance Joe Pavlak, members of the committee. Additionally, have our city clerk Janice Frank, Council President Randy Allison, our legal counsel Norm Lubin, Josh Warfel, Mr. Girardi from Codes will not make it today. Councilwoman Palizzi will also be late as well. So just a heads up for everybody. We'll work through the agenda today. First up, updates on the renovation of City Hall option. John, I was gonna kind of let you, I think, so we got the documentation you sent out yesterday, John.
Yeah.
Looks good. Thank you very much. Just wanted to give you the opportunity to kind of speak through the space utilization component that you had sent out. Kind of maybe walk us through what you found out, the process you took to kind of go through that, and then maybe looking forward if there's anything about various departments or what have you that we might encounter down the road that we might need to incorporate.
Yeah, so the financials are just a combination of Reynolds and Visco's 2017 compilation of all the work needed at City Hall, and just going down through them all. It's I'll get to the space in a second, but that's, the first is the HVAC system replacement, roughly 2.5 million, and then you're talking the roof for the north half of the building, which we did the south half already, right? So that's 800 some thousand. Various mason reporting, 50 grand. The accessibility wheelchair ramp, essentially, but 150 some thousand. Toilet, bathroom upgrades, 250 grand. Hardware, yada yada. Elevator upgrade, no new elevator for 220 grand. Fire, sprinkler, etc. Runs out to be about $4.99 million. This was done by a registered architect and a construction management firm. So I kind of somewhat trust their numbers pretty well.
Yeah, and John, when you and I had chatted earlier today, I generally agree. I mean, they're both pretty reputable firms. They've got good reputations in the industry from my experience. The thing that I have started to work on my end, specifically around the HVAC option, is just, I mean, that's the biggest chunk of this from what we're seeing. So I will continue to take some time to, I think, just kind of make sure that is fairly accurate. I mean, because that will really, if it's not, it'll sway the number one way or the other the most. But aside from that, I would generally agree as somebody from within the industry. So thanks for diving into that.
So
go ahead.
Well, if I can ask a question, then who provided these numbers, or what did you pull down from?
Report done by Tony Visco and Reynolds Construction Management from 2017.
Got it. So this is a combination of the Visco and the Reynolds numbers?
Yes.
Okay, got it. And do we have any idea what construction costs have done since then?
I mean, some of these that might have been done. Is that what you're asking?
No.
You're part of a cost escalation, right, Liz?
Yeah.
Oh, we could do an escalation from 17 to 20. I mean, I didn't.
I'm asking in a general. I mean, you didn't escalate the cost given that 3 years have passed in the meantime?
I did not. I thought about it, but do you want to see it higher? We can make it higher.
Well, so Liz, to answer that question, I would specifically say, from my experience, over the past couple of years, I think costs generally have mimicked CPI. However, I will say specifically within the HVAC industry, I have seen more cost escalations, specifically within the equipment industry, over the past couple of years with a lot of the tariffs that were implemented. So I would suspect if you're going to see any out of the ordinary cost escalation is going to be in that HVAC number, which is why I want to take some additional time to, I think, kind of hone that in a little bit more.
Well, and I think, I mean, personally, I'd feel more comfortable, right? If maybe we don't need to break down all those costs for ourselves because yeah, it's a lot of stuff and there's no point for us to reinvent the wheel if somebody's already given us numbers. But
Yeah.
I would agree with you that I think it would make sense to break out at least one specific item to give us a bit of a sense of how accurate all the numbers are. You know what I mean?
Yeah, The big one would be the HVAC. So yeah, that'd make sense, Adam, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and Adam happens to have the expertise to do that, whereas, right. So do it, Adam.
I will. Don't worry. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I think that'd be helpful at least to give us some sense. Okay, so sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you guys. I was just trying to figure out once John started referencing having taken the numbers from somewhere, I wanted to see if they were new numbers from something new or the numbers from some of the other studies that we're familiar with. So thanks.
Are there any more recent reports from Gannett Fleming? I know that they had been utilized more recently, and I wasn't sure whether they've done any studies or any of the specific projects that may be in here that may be more up to date.
There might be. If you guys can find something to do for a minute or two, I can answer that for you.
John, there is, to answer the question. A lot of it, from what I saw, was more. There's some HVAC fire protection in there. A bulk of it appeared to be what's the term? Aesthetic in nature, like concrete, tiling, that kind of stuff. But there is one from 2019. So, and then there's some additional.
Was that Gannett? Gannett in 2019?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I liked this one because it was all encompassing. But Gannett, April 19, there it is, yeah.
Well, I'm just thinking if there are projects that mimic each other between the previous report from 17 and the newer report, we can see where costs may have escalated if they have.
Yeah, there is this one includes ramp, elevator, access. But sorry. I'll tell you what, I can compare and contrast the two and send out more information to everyone here after the meeting.
Yeah.
I thought also, and maybe I'm missing it in what you sent out, John, access controls, like card readers, things of that nature that were added as a priority in the last few years, which doesn't appear to be in the previous one. So.
Okay, yeah, I'll look at this one from 2019 and see if I can compare or contrast the two.
So Joe, there was some access control stuff in the Reynolds one as well.
Yeah, that's in.
Which is where he pulled that from.
I just glanced at the overall subjects. I didn't get into the details. So, and the other thing that I know that's always been an issue, and I'm guessing that it's in both, is the thermostats.
Yeah, so if you look at the Reynolds one, they have that included under the HVAC side. So, and that's probably a big ticket item in that 2.5. I guarantee it is. So, but good point.
Yep.
And duly noted. As far as scope and that kind of stuff, does anybody else have any other questions before he jumps into the space utilization component? It doesn't sound like it. John, you want to dive into the what you found out over the past month with space utilization?
Yeah, myself and Joe Girardi went around essentially from basement to the top, asking every department what they need. And we already knew what they had because through previous reports for space utilization done for City Hall. And I mean, I can read them off, but I guess I might as well. Joe and Gary and guys downstairs and codes and zoning, they currently have 3,150 square feet, 3,150 square feet. They need approximately 2,200 square feet, not including storage. The first floor, we met with Nick and his treasury folks. They currently have about 950 square feet. They need 600 square feet with a fire safe room or a fireproof safe system. Going up to the second floor, community development, 1,200 square feet. They need roughly about 900. Myself, I have my couple offices there. I have 710. I only need about 200 square feet. City clerk, she currently has 408 square feet. Really only needs about 300 square feet. Finance, we talked to Joe Pollock, me and Joe Girardi. He currently has 916 square feet. It'd be ideal for him to have about 800 square feet with 4 independent offices, ideally in a secure location. Controller currently has about 440 square feet between the 2 offices, and they need about the same amount, about 400 square feet. Up on the 3rd floor, the mayor currently has 821 square feet and needs, I had talked to Derek, he said roughly 2/3 of that is about 550, and obviously in a secure location. And his executive assistant currently has about 405 square feet, really only needs about 250 square feet of that. Obviously it's in a secure location, ideally connected to Derek's office. And HR has about 500 square feet, and she really only needs about 350. So we could scale things down, so a little bit here as far as square footage needs. So that does not take into account police at all. So.
Okay. And I mean, just for curiosity's sake, I know we've been bouncing between this, public safety building, what have you.
Yeah.
Do we just not have enough time to get to the police department? I mean, I would assume it's a little bit of a different animal as well.
It is a different animal, and I guess recently they made some traction or some financial traction with that public safety building, right? From what I've understood, possibly.
Yeah, possibly. Councilwoman Katz had mentioned at council this past Thursday that the governor put some money in his capital budget possibly, and we're exploring that. So that is that's good news if that is the case. So we're looking into that as well.
But again, that's similar to our capital budget. I mean, there's,
Right.
I think in when I looked at the state's capital budgets that are open right now, there's about 277 million for the county. So just for the county, not the state. I don't know
Right.
what funds are
Right.
available, but
Right.
we have to
And
present our
it's
case.
correct. And it would obviously subject to change. Obviously the dollar amounts would be subject to change possibly as well.
We do have an ad hoc committee for a public safety building, and we intend on having another meeting in August, inviting the county and hospital to that meeting for the purpose of talking about public safety building and also drafting an MOU. We have one. We just need to make sure that all 3 entities are still willing to participate.
When we say all 3 entities, the county, the city, and
PMC.
UPMC. Gotcha.
The initial idea was that wherever we would build a new public safety building, that it would be a true public safety building, and it would also include EMS, which is obviously private, but very near and dear to what we do as well. So we would have all these services in the same area. Right now, the coroner, as you know, needs a home. If we were to see the DA's plans made true, then a central court could be constructed in such a facility. Certainly police, fire, and codes from the city, local grand jury rooms occupied by a security detail from the sheriff's department, and also court officials could be in such a facility. Possibly a processing area all sorts of facilities, EMS,
Yeah.
CERT, things like that could be there. And it would be much, much more efficient. It's basically a 40 or 50-year decision as opposed to just another Band-Aid.
Yeah.
We're going to have to fix 5 or 10 years down the road.
So to answer your question, I think Councilman Yoder, whether or not we decide to stay or move to another location, public safety potentially, would possibly be in another, separate from our needs of City Hall, so to speak.
Yeah,
Possibly.
understood. And it seems like we might have a little bit more, I don't want to say clarity on if it'll happen, but at least that it's a viable option. We may not have a timetable, but it seems like we might have some guidance on, hey, like this is a legitimate thing that could happen. Okay. I think that would be helpful as we try to go through all of these individual things. To kind of pull it back onto the space utilization, and then I'll let other members of the committee here chime in. The thing that stuck out to me is that generally it seems like we have more space than we need administratively. And it seems like that was a common theme throughout all the individual departments. Correct, John?
Yeah, I mean, it's an old building that's not
Yeah.
laid out very efficiently like newer buildings are, so, yeah.
The only thing that comes to mind, I know that over the years we have shrunk city government for a combination of efficiencies, but out of necessity financially. I don't know that that's going to change anytime soon, but it also seems to me that we could use some more resources in some strategic places. So I would just think as we leverage this and kind of continue to build this out, we should keep that in mind. I'm not saying we want to grow city government, but at some point we will likely bring in more resources. We want to make sure, I would think we want to make sure we have the space for them. It's hard to do without, I acknowledge it's hard to do, but that was the one thing that kind of stuck out to me.
Yeah, don't be packed in somewhere is basically what you're saying, that we're packed into the max with little to no room available.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. We don't want to pigeonhole ourselves necessarily. That's a little hard to do. So I think as we look at, any other comments on the space utilization stuff from the group? I find this helpful.
I think it's helpful. I think that we also need to address whatever common spaces that will be required in a facility. So, be it copy rooms, lunch rooms, break rooms, things of that nature. And yeah. Also looking into, for each department, a lot of our departments are 1 or 2 member departments anyway, so I'd expect separate offices, but do any of the departments or any of the uses allow for an open office space versus individual offices? And then I know that some of your highlights are, additionally storage. I know that there's desires to go paperless where we can, but the question then will remain, what do we do from the past? So I think that any storage needs for what we currently have should be looked at. And then if we don't end up here, possibly trade and transit 1 and 2, what space would we have for council chambers? Clerk was on the list, but I didn't see council chambers unless I missed it.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think, Joe, to the point, what that space in particular, we might want to outline. I guess what are some of our other needs, right? That is to say, we obviously need a wired building with high speed wireless, right? Council chambers has some slightly specific build out requirements that we're looking at, and do we need it to be wired for TV? So some of those questions perhaps, are things that we should be considering too.
Obviously, multiple conference rooms would be desirable too. Obviously, they could be shared.
Right. Or at least, I mean, yeah, I'd say maybe as few as two, but
Yeah.
We have the public, the secular room currently. Is it something that we need to have something of that capacity? Or would council chambers and that room be able to be use the same space? So just thoughts to consider and maybe what space needs were for each of those.
right. And if we don't replicate the cycler room in another location, do we are we looking at potentially having to rent something like that on the handful of occasions when we have two uses, like the police are using something all day for a training session or something like that, and we also have meetings in a room like council chambers,
That would be, would Liz, would that be assuming that that the police and city hall are still in one space?
well, I mean, that's
they're-
not
if
much.
they're-
I'm just thinking of there are times when that room is utilized for some sort of training, even for like a community need or something like that. Is that a need that we're intending to continue meeting? And if so, would we rent a room if we didn't have a room like that available on a regular basis? I guess is my point. I mean, yeah, the police training was the first thing that happened to come to mind, but I think there
So-
are other things that we've used that room for.
Two public meetings being held concurrently that both need large
Right.
venues. I understand. Okay.
Yeah. I'm just, I mean, at this point, I think we're both just spitballing things that City Hall currently possesses that we might or might not need to take with us if we were to leave, but things we need to consider before we find ourselves without them in some new space and wishing we had them. So,
I would completely agree. Especially some of these common areas, storage, that kind of stuff. I think that we probably neglect to think about how important that is for us, especially how we are right now, as far as how we operate and how we store stuff. So,
right.
I completely agree.
A regional public safety building, should we get one, and I absolutely believe we will in the near future. But if we do, the mayor has articulated ideas to me about a community aspect to that building. A regional public safety building would need able to come on to the community. So I think that would be a good backup if you needed to have a place for public meetings and there wasn't something available in trade and transit or wherever we might move. There certainly would be conference rooms and places like that in the new regional public safety building where we could do some of that.
Perfect. Yeah, John, I just made a couple notes about the space utilization stuff. I'm not sure if that's some items that you and Joe Girardi could hone in on for the next meeting potentially.
Yeah.
Just
I took some notes on those as well. So, yep.
perfect.
Storage, common space, conference rooms, kitchen areas, chambers, print rooms, places like that. Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's all going to factor into, some of these non-city hall options as we kind of hone in on what they look like, costs associated, that kind of stuff. So, okay. No, I think the space utilization thing was a great start. Some stuff to hone in on, but I think we're making progress there. So that's great. So those were the two big things I wanted to highlight on the first agenda item. Does anybody else have any questions or anything specific with that agenda item? I think there's some pretty clear stuff that we need to keep pushing forward on, but I think we're making progress there. So, okay. We'll move forward. Item number 2, updates on trade and transit 1 and 2. We had a pretty lengthy discussion at our last meeting about a number of things associated with it. The one thing that I had in my notes, and I may have missed it if it was clarified, but it seemed like we still were working on some final clarifications on not really if we could go there, but what the structure would look like. What leasing or what have you. Do we make any progress in kind of clearing up what that would look like?
We haven't looked at that any further yet. I think that's going to be a relatively complex thing to sort out. I
Fair.
mean, not super complex, but I guess I was thinking, and I'll defer. Maybe Joe has a different opinion. I was thinking of that as sort of a second tier exploration. The next thing that I figured that we would look into was whether or not the spaces there could meet our needs, and or to what extent the spaces there would have to be modified to meet our needs. So the numbers that John provided are of course exceptionally helpful. And I was going to propose that possibly Joe, John, and I could meet up over there at some point in the next over the course of the next couple of weeks, just to have a look at the existing spaces and see to what extent we think there's enough space there for what we need. And then, it seemed pretty clear that we could work out an ongoing lease agreement with RBT for the space if we decide the space is desirable. What's a little less clear is I feel a certain imperative to own the space that we occupy.
Yeah.
And leasing it from another arm of the city is damn close to owning it, so I'm
Yeah.
not saying that's not a viable option, but if we wanted to purchase one of the buildings outright from RBT, what that would look like is not clear. Whether or not it'd be possible, whether or not we'd have to reimburse the state for some of the federal grant money or the state or the feds for some of the grant money we receive for transit stuff. You know what I mean? But that's as if Stephanie Young's on this meeting, and I don't think that she is, but anyway, as she might be able to attest, once there's federal or state funding involved in something, sometimes the transfer of it, as we're seeing with the land under Executive Plaza, can get exceptionally complicated. So I think that would be something we'd start looking into with a little more seriously if we determined that the space was likely to meet our needs. But like I said, we'll be happy to take care of some of that here this month. Trying, John, if you're available, trying to sit down with John and Joe and I, and just sort of look at what we have over there. And Joe, am I missing anything?
No, I agree with that. I think that that's just the next step, because we feel that be it lease or own, we could potentially do either. There's an avenue for us to get in there. It's just a matter of can we fit in there. So I think that that's our next step, and then we'll continue to pursue the ownership or leasing option following.
Right. And then the other question that we need to look at as we're looking at space is, to what extent does the space need to be modified, and can we find, what's that going to cost us? The other reason that I'd like to look at it with John in particular is the building is 20 years old, which of course is nothing compared to the 100 some years old that City Hall is. But are there systems in place in the building that we'll need to look at replacing at some point soon? You know what I mean? Is the building currently compliant with ADA? As we would need to be in, and questions like that, I think, are also considerations we need to take into account as we look through it.
Yeah.
Liz, the more things you bring up, the more people I think should come to visit this.
Well, I think in the long run, probably whatever we're examining, all of us should go look at all the spaces.
Yeah.
If once we have like a short list. But I think I was just thinking that if the three of us went through it, it makes it quick, efficient. You know what I mean? And then we can bring a report back to the committee, and then maybe either all of us can go look at it, or we can make a longer list of people who ought to have a look and kind of evaluate the needs there.
Sounds good.
In the long run, as I've said from the beginning, I think at some point we should bring in a third party to do a final analysis for us. But the more of the legwork we can do ourselves, the less that process will cost us. So let's try and knock out as much stuff as we can, and then see whether or not we feel like we need an independent view on the whole thing.
No, I would agree with that. And I should have some more flexibility over moving forward now, work-wise. So I don't want to make it a burdensome process, but if I can make it, I'd be happy to come along as well and would actually love to. I've never been in there and would like to. It's been on my list to do since we started this process. So
You never went to see Annie get your gun, Adam?
I have not. I have not. I'll add that to the list
Right.
at your recommendation.
A lot of really great productions there. I mean, not right now, obviously, but
Yeah.
but we're lucky to have the community theater league.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Anyway, I'll share.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's all. That's all that I have. And unless Joe has anything to add, I think that's it for our report.
Okay. Anybody else on the committee have any questions for option 2? All right, moving on. Item number 3, option number 3, updates on the non-city-owned facility. I did so. Joe Girardi and Vince Blizzy are not here. I did talk to them. It's a slow-moving process as far as what we had talked about last meeting with 3rd Street Plaza. Nothing really new to report there. Mayor Slaughter, I thought I would give you the floor, though. I know you had reached out to us regarding a couple of other options that were presented to you. I didn't know if you wanted to discuss them in some more detail and throw them out to the committee as items to start exploring in more detail based on what you know, what you don't know.
Yeah, and I don't know a whole lot about them right now. Folks have reached out to me, so I was planning over the next week or so to set up something for the committee and whomever else would like to go those to take a look at those spaces and then report back the next meeting once we've had a chance to take a look and see if they're viable options or not. Right now at this point, there's nothing really to report on there other than there are possible options that we might be able to consider in the future. So hopefully over the next week or so, we'll be able to set something up to go take a look.
Okay. No,
Yep.
that's great. If you can keep, if you would be so kind, at least, is to keep Councilman Pelizzi and Joe in the loop.
Oh, absolutely. I'll
will,
keep
yeah.
everyone. Yeah, I'll keep everyone in the loop. Yeah, whoever can make it is welcome to obviously tour the space.
Yeah, well, no, I'm just thinking from with their background and what have you. I think they'd be.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. No, that's perfect. So moving on to item number 4. I should say, is there any other questions, comments on item number 3 on the agenda from anybody? Okay. Item number 4, additional resources needed. It seems to me that I think, deliverables, kind of things that we're working on over the next month. I don't know that we're going to need anything additional yet. Is there anything I'm missing from anybody? I don't think so. Okay. And then just to kind of review some notes here, just to make sure I'm not missing anything. So train transit 1 and 2, option number 2, leveraging the space utilization, kind of going through, doing a little bit of a deep dive to make sure it could fit our needs from a high level. Option number 3, making progress on or continuing down the path with 3rd Street, but also Mayor Slaughter, what you had referenced. And then on option number 1 and the HVAC piece, Chief, you had mentioned about the public safety group, hoping to have some little bit more clarity, I guess, for the next meeting. And then the space utilization stuff that we discussed, John. Those were a lot of the big notes that I had as far as next deliverables for the next meeting. Did I miss anything from any of our discussion? Okay. Item number 6, any related items. The only thing that I did want to throw out to the committee, Bruce Huffman had emailed all of us today, and I had actually talked to him when this process started about this idea, and I think it would be interesting and a good idea. He has a lot of history on the process of how we got City Hall, a lot of the back workings and the history associated with it. I think it would be a good idea to have him present some of that history for us, just as we move forward. We've talked about that a little bit, making sure that in this process, we keep in mind how we envision ourselves and view ourselves and how the city will perceive city government. I think that will tie into that well. So unless there's any hesitation from the committee, I'm going to plan to invite him for our next meeting to do a presentation on that for all of our educational purposes, what have you. I think it'd be a good idea. So
Who is that, Adam?
Bruce Huffman.
Bruce?
Bruce Huffman, yeah, he's a local history individual. He attends our meetings regularly. He has a lot of good knowledge, not only just on city of Williamsport history, but city government history and inner workings as well. So a pretty valuable individual. I think he would have some value to bring in that regard as we start to have that be a part of the conversation moving forward in the committee. So, okay.
Hey, Adam.
Yeah.
The one other thing I might say is I had been contacted last year and actually never followed up with this gentleman, and I feel a little bad about it, but by an individual named Thomas Chelly, who does who has done through his firm, and I can't remember the name of the firm right now, evaluations of historic structures. They did complete renovations on 2 buildings at Bucknell, for instance. And if we were open to it, I think probably the firm would be interested in coming and presenting, just talking about adaptive reuse of City Hall and the potential for that, if that's something that we want to hear about as part of the process of making our evaluation. It might be that they would have what I guess I would describe as kind of an outside the box sort of thought process on meeting some of the requirements that we're talking about, some of that $5 million price tag, things that we might be able to save on in a historic structure by going another route or something like that. So might be something we want to consider in an upcoming ad hoc meeting.
Okay. I appreciate that, Liz.
Yeah.
Chief, you had a related item.
You had mentioned wanting more information about the Public Safety Building Committee. It's no secret, we had 4 meetings last year. We ended in October with a meeting at 3rd Street Plaza where we did a presentation for some council members and county commissioners. Joe Girardi was kind enough to make some preliminary drawings for what could be done in an area out near the hospital, which was one of the concepts we had. We had people from the hospital there then. And so the idea came up that we really couldn't do anything officially without an MOU between the 3 entities. So we waited for some time to get one drafted. We have that done. And now we're not going to do anything else other than meet one more time without the city and county government and the leadership of the hospital signing off on an MOU. If such a thing was done, then we would have an official committee and we would be able to actually go after funding for a feasibility study and for an architect and potentially more down the road. But right now, we're just in the concept phase where we're going to be hopefully bringing something to city council in the near future in the way of an MOU that would allow us to do more in the future.
Yeah.
We're encouraged by all of the teamwork going on. And we are very positive. We think this will happen. The question is just how long will it take? Thank you.
Yeah. No, understood. And I guess, that meeting will happen by the time we have this next meeting. So, I mean, in my mind, any other option, it seems to me that any option outside of staying in City Hall is going to need to have at least some commitment on that public safety building from at least the county, because there's no way we can do that on our own in my mind. So I think just seeing that commitment would be progress in my mind. So
we intend to have our next ad hoc public safety building committee in early August. I will let everyone on council know, and you would all be welcome to attend. We're going to talk about that issue, these issues at that meeting, and then also everyone will have a chance to speak up on their willingness in terms of all three entities to still participate, since it's been a while. Corona, like everything else, it kind of shut this process down earlier this year, or we probably would have already had these conversations.
No, good. I appreciate that, Chief. Joe?
Just one real quick thing for John. I know we talked earlier and you said you'd compare Gannett Fleming to the Reynolds report. I might also recommend talking to Adam and getting with his guys who do the work, the city staff that do work at this building. I know, and I don't know whether it's included as a part of an existing grouping already there, but I know like drain pipes that run through the building, things of that nature, have needed work, and they're digging through walls to get to stuff like that. So I'm just trying to think of things as we go through, and they might be the most valuable, since when there are issues here at the building, they're typically the ones that are called out first to investigate. So it might be some help to have them go through the list with you to see if there's anything additional that maybe behind the walls or something that we're not thinking of as a big ticket, but potentially could be.
Good point. Thanks, Joe.
Anybody else on the committee have anything? Bonnie, Randy, I know you guys are, while you're not on the committee, you're here with us. Is there anything from you guys? Give you guys the floor if there's anything, any feedback, any comments, what have you on what we've been discussing today.
Nothing so far. It's the information's coming in and I think we're digesting.
Perfect.
Yeah, you're making good progress. I like it. Good job, everyone.
Yeah, no, I think we're making good progress as well. And so good collaboration and good teamwork. So I'm excited to keep it going. Nothing else from the committee. I'll take a motion in a second to adjourn.
So
Was-
moved.
Second, all in favor.
Aye. It's always
Thanks,
so
everyone.
two of us.
Yeah, I know. Thank you, everyone.